Welcome to Cognify 365. Learn psychology, sociology, and anthropology one slide at a time. Narrated lessons, clear explanations, real-world insights. Let's begin. Welcome to African Humanities, Roots, Culture, and Identity. We begin with an African proverb: to know oneself is to know one's history. African humanities survived through memory, rhythm, and resistance, despite being interrupted and rewritten. It is an unbroken thread of resilience. Understanding African humanities goes beyond art or history. It is about resilience, creativity, and the human spirit that shaped civilizations and, for me, my own identity. We explore the voices of the ancestors through the proverb: until the lion tells his story, the hunter will always be the hero. The power of storytelling is central. Stories teach values, ethics, and survival. African storytelling passes wisdom across generations, similar to sharing my journey in fitness, faith, and the fight. The rhythm of life is vital. Music and dance are expressions of joy, struggle, and community, embodying the heartbeat of the soul. I see parallels in fitness. Movement connects body, mind, and spirit. Faith often guides that rhythm in my life. Art, as a symbol of meaning, speaks what words cannot. It is a powerful form of nonverbal communication. African art, like masks and sculptures, functions as storytelling and identity, carrying messages of ancestry and morality. Like my memoir, art tells stories words alone can't fully capture. African philosophies emphasize wisdom and spirituality. The Ubuntu philosophy, I am because we are, highlights interconnectedness and responsibility. This concept of Ubuntu resonates with my personal faith and community, where personal growth is deeply tied to community and purpose. My African heritage informs my worldview, fitness discipline, and spiritual practice. Knowing your roots allows you to rise higher and grounds me in who I am. The forbidden drum represents cultural resilience. Drums were banned during enslavement because they carried messages, memory, and rebellion. They were dangerous. The unwritten library represents knowledge passed down orally. Histories were carried by grandmothers, often whispered because speaking them aloud could be lethal. The underground resilience of African American culture shows that despite being stripped of language and land, African humanities did not vanish. They went underground in songs, stories, and silence. It's crucial to remember that Africa is not a country. It is a vast continent with 54 countries, each with a unique history, culture, and identity. Western education often ignored great African civilizations like Timbuktu, Ife, and Kemet, while promoting Greece and Rome. This educational exclusion was by design, not accident. The power of humanities is clear. Erasing someone's humanities weakens not just their past, but also their future. We must reconnect with these essential histories. We see hip-hop's traditional roots in African traditions like call and response, oral storytelling, coded language, and rhythm used as a means of survival. The roots of spirit in the Black Church are inherited from African cosmology, ancestor reverence, and communal ritual. The spirit is an echo of ancient practices. This video is part of a larger conversation within the African Humanities course. We encourage you to further explore the themes of identity, culture, and resilience discussed here. Thank you for watching this overview of African humanities. The concepts presented are deeply rooted in historical and cultural context. Understanding these roots provides essential insight into global human history. The importance of oral tradition and cultural preservation remains a core takeaway. Consider how these ideas influence contemporary art and thought. This knowledge is vital for a complete understanding of human civilization. We hope this video inspires deeper study of African culture. Explore the connections between history and personal identity. Continue your journey in African humanities.
African Humanities explores African history, philosophy, art, literature, religion, and cultural expression as lived human experiences. This course examines how African societies understand identity, meaning, morality, power, and community across time and place. Career paths connected to African humanities: cultural anthropologist, museum or archive professional, educator/humanities instructor, international relations and diplomacy, NGO/humanitarian work, cultural consultant or researcher, media, documentary or journalism, diversity, equity, and inclusion roles, creative fields, writing, art, film, curation. Humanities careers are about interpretation, context, and meaning, not memorization. Current events angles, artifact repatriation debates, Global conversations about colonial legacy, African influence in fashion, music, and art, language preservation, and cultural revival, Africa's role in global politics and economics. Africa is not history, it's current. Light humor. Africa is not a country, and no, it never was. Oral tradition existed before PowerPoint, and still works better. If history feels incomplete, it probably is. Culture doesn't disappear, it adapts. No footnotes. Still knowledge. Wisdom doesn't need permission. African humanities didn't arrive in America as books. They arrived as wounds, and America spent centuries pretending those wounds meant nothing. We are studying what survived despite being hunted. Africa wasn't lost. It was silenced. Africa was not primitive. It was interrupted. Libraries burned. Languages were criminalized. Names were replaced with inventory numbers. When Africans were forced into America, their humanities weren't erased. They were made illegal. African Americans, humanities without permission. African Americans live inside a nation built on their labor, haunted by their culture, and uncomfortable with their memory. You were told your history began in chains because anything before that makes America nervous. A people denied their past are easier to manage in the present. The brutal truth about identity. African Americans are expected to be grateful, patriotic, and quiet, while carrying trauma older than the country judging them. You're American when it's time to work. African when it's time to blame. Too African for America. Too American for Africa. Stuck in between, explaining yourself to everyone. America's dirty secret about culture. America consumes black culture the way it once consumed black bodies, enthusiastically, without responsibility. African aesthetics are loved. African people are tolerated. African American culture is celebrated until it asks for justice. Education as controlled amnesia. Schools taught African Americans to memorize European thinkers while doubting their own ancestors ever thought deeply. You learned Plato. You weren't taught Ptahhotep. That wasn't an oversight. That was conditioning. The violence of forgetting. The most successful violence isn't physical. It's historical. When a people forget who they were, they start negotiating who they're allowed to be. African humanities didn't just suffer slavery. They suffered selective memory. To study African humanities in America is to study a people who were never supposed to remember. Cognify 365. Because some knowledge was buried on purpose. Yet memory survived, in rhythm, resistance, grief, and brilliance. Africa didn't disappear. It learned how to breathe underwater.